We're going to take a time out here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk to Jim Pfaff, the president of the Conservative Caucus. Stick around on the Chris DeGaulle Show. Yeah, that's a good thing to have. It is 33 minutes past the hour. Good morning to you. We might be within a half an hour of the start of a vote on the House floor in support of the big, beautiful bill. Good morning. I'm Bob France in for Chris. And they worked at it all night long to get the rules package approved. They're now in debate, and it could be as early as 8 o'clock that they may be starting a vote to pass the big, beautiful bill and give President Trump exactly what he wants for not his birthday, but for America's birthday, a bill to sign on Independence Day tomorrow. That is the hope. Joining us now to talk about it is the president of the Conservative Caucus, also the former chief of staff of Congressman Thomas Massie, one of the biggest opponents of the big, beautiful bill as we know it, and the conservativecaucus.org. Jim Pfaff joining us now here on the Chris DeGaulle Show. Jim, good morning. It's Bob France sitting in. It's good to have you. How are you?
Good. Great to be with you, Bob.
Good to talk to you too. So, boy, this is something that's driving a stake right between or amongst, I guess I should say, conservative Republicans on the Hill and across the country. What is the view of the Conservative Caucus of the big, beautiful bill as you know it today? And that, of course, means after a lot of amendments, a lot of changes on the Senate side from what the House originally passed.
Well, honestly, in one sense, this is a huge missed opportunity by Congress to make some very significant changes to what is the worst part of our federal budget, and that's non-discretionary spending, which is all those programs we create that if you qualify for them, the money's paid out. So we budget for it in a sense, but not really, because anyone who qualifies is in there. So Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, all of these things are, they're programs that are going to be as expensive as they're going to be based upon whoever will be, participating in the program. And we had a chance for even better Medicaid reform that the House actually did a pretty decent job on. I think they could have done better, but they did a pretty decent job on. And then the Senate changed that up. I mean, this also continues the funding of trans surgeries. But that having been said, there are so many big wins in this bill. Donald Trump wins. And in fact, we would have none of them if it weren't for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump hadn't gone through the, the melee that he went through to become president again, we wouldn't have a continuation of the Trump tax cuts. The Republicans would have definitely folded on that in any other circumstance, particularly with Kamala Harris as president if she had won. We would not, and they're permanent too, which I've spent 30 years in politics. I've never seen permanent tax cuts made permanent. It's really actually breathtaking in a way. So, and you do have some Medicaid reform. The border security stuff is fantastic. This is something the American people really want. So, we're supportive of this bill for sure because there are so many Donald Trump wins on this, and we just hope that we have a Republican Congress after 2026 to maybe build on this in a more significant way.
Well, that's largely what this is all about. I completely concur, because what we're talking about right now is the Trump agenda that he ran on and that brought moderates to him. He won and we won. I think collectively America won when all 7 of the swing states came over, gave him the 312 electoral votes and said, yeah, between what the Democrats are selling and what he's selling, I want those things. I want that secure border. I want those tax cuts permanent. I want to see our energy unleashed. I want to see a strong military that was gutted essentially by Joe Biden. And I want to see school choice. All of those things are massive wins. And anytime, right, when you get a reconciliation bill of this size, you're going to have things in it you don't like. You're going to have things in it that you love and that other people don't like. You have to be willing to be flexible here and say, I'll take the wins and I'll work on the losses later. Do you think they finally understand that?
Maybe. Listen, I'm not into flexibility, by the way. We need a radical reform in American government. But we have to take the wins that we can get through the process that we have, and which is not flexible, to be candid. So that's what makes this a bit of a breathtaking win in certain ways. But the other thing is Donald Trump is fulfilling the Reagan legacy. There are a lot of TDS Republicans out there who hate populism and they're so upset with Donald Trump. That coalition that Donald Trump has put together, yeah, you could say that there are some moderates there. It's actually just really disaffected people who have finally found someone that wants to continue this legacy of the conservative movement that began long ago. And Donald Trump was able to bring that together. None of those people who complain about Donald Trump and who hate him, the Bill Kristols of the world and others, none of them ever did anything to advance an agenda. And the one thing that Donald Trump has done better than Reagan is on immigration. Ronald Reagan's greatest failure was the 1986 amnesty that happened. He thought he was fixing a system. And by the way, there was a fix because the law is pretty strict against illegals coming into the country out of that bill. But it gave amnesty to so many people, it started to set a precedent in government where we've just kind of let this thing fly off the hook through various administrations since then. So he's actually building extra upon that legacy. But it's just a reminder to us that all this bill process, that the weak part of the Trump agenda is Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump's not the weak one. He's doing exactly the work that the American people want. It's Republicans in Congress that will not recognize the political wins that are there, that are an American win, a pro-American win, and take advantage of it. They didn't fully do that in this case, but at least they took a lot of the Trump priorities that are so important to the American people.
Yeah, no question about it. We're talking to Jim Pfaff, president of the Conservative Caucus, online at theconservativecaucus.org. What about people like your former boss, Thomas Massie, used to work for, and obviously on the Senate side, Tom Tillis? There are certain individuals who have been obstructionist in this agenda that President Trump is trying to push forward here, that President Trump has targeted specifically and said, I'm primarying your butt, you're done. Others, he's been a little bit more, kind toward, even though there are disagreements there. But what message do you have for people like Thomas Massie, people like Tom Tillis, and others who may still not get the story you're telling right now?
Well, for whatever faults that people want to lay upon Thomas, obstructionist, I do not believe is one of them. Remember how I just said that there's no flexibility in Congress? Congress has no, IQ to consider what the American people want and then to get that done. The American people do not want the government we have. We just saw that in this last election. But listen, I think it's potentially it is a big waste of time to go after the people like Thomas Massie. We need to go after the people like Brian Fitzpatrick, who remained a no on this rule vote last night. Why? Because he wants more Ukraine funding. That's not what the American people want. It's these moderates, so-called moderates in the Republican caucus, who are the ones that need to move along. And in fact, that you want to talk about his beef with Thomas Massie, I'm more prone to accept the president's beef against people like Tom Tillis, who is not going to run again for Congress. And we may have an opportunity to pick up someone who actually understands what the American agenda is. Tom Tillis does not, he is not bound to that agenda. Mitch McConnell has not been bound to that agenda at all. We have these moderates, particularly on the Appropriations Committee, with the one key exception being Andy Harris, who's just a hero. I mean, if we had 435, if we had 225, let's just Republican Thomas Massies, what we could do to transform this country would be amazing. We could really get to a place where we go back to a constitutional agenda. People need to read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, read through that list and tell me how much of what we do in government is even constitutional. I would argue that well over 50% of everything we spend in the federal budget is not constitutional. We've gone so far out of hand. We need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We need to reduce the size of government. We need to change the way we do these things to allow the American people and the American economy to go crazy and for people to live their lives well. And when they make good moral decisions, to reap all the benefits of that. Government takes away so much of the good moral choices when they do exist of the American people, just by taking our taxes to the point where, everyone's working for the government, federal, state, and local, until May of every year. I mean, every American's working that long, except for a very few, just to get out of their tax burden. That we need a radical shift in the way we government, and it's the Tom Tillises that keep us from doing that, not so much the Thomas Massies.
No, I don't disagree with a bit of that, but I do want to get some clarity here, because when I talked about flexibility, what I mean is I don't like what you just pointed out about the trans aspect of this bill. I don't like the fact that it only defunds Planned Parenthood for 1 year instead of for 10 years. I don't like the fact that the no tax on tips has a very, very short shelf life as well. There are things that I want in this bill that I'm not getting, but I'm going to be flexible enough and say I want to vote for it anyway. So that's the flexibility when I say that. And then the second part is about, it wasn't intended to be a pejorative to say that Thomas is an obstructionist, because I don't mean it as a blanket statement. I mean, in this bill, this vote today, if you vote against it, you're obstructing the mission. You're getting in the way of the mission here, which is we have to pass this to give us a fighting chance to keep the majority in 2026. Is that fair?
Well, I hope that this bill helps with the majority in 2026, because Republicans are very good at taking defeat out of the jaws of victory, and they are on track to have a huge victory in 2026 if they're willing to grab it. Will this bill get us there? It'll get us part of the way there. I think there's some very good wins here, but now we need a rescission packages coming out from the Trump White House that can cut up to $500 billion of the current budget, which is what a rescission package does. So we need an aggressive move on that. That, I think, would secure 2026 victory for Republicans. Now, in terms of obstructing this particular legislation, listen, we're supportive of a passage of this bill. We want this bill passed, and that is going to be a very good win for Donald Trump, and I'm going to be grateful for that, and it's going to help us in the future. So, but these members of Congress have to make a decision based upon the information in front of them and what their hopes and wishes are. That's the messiness of a legislative process. But I think ultimately, we're going to get this over the finish line, and everyone's going to be happy with it. And we're going to forget these internecine battles.
Yeah, I hope so. I think the first part is true. I think we're going to get it over the finish line. Will everybody be happy with it, especially if there's a $5 trillion debt limit increase? No, they're not all going to be happy with it, but they're going to be happy with the results going forward. We're going to see a lot of benefits to the American consumer over the next 12 to 15 to 16 months that it's going to set us up for an opportunity to win in 2026. And that is crucial, of course, if we're to have any opportunity in the last 2 years of the Trump administration, free of impeachments and investigations. Great stuff, great analysis. Jim Pfaff, the Conservative Caucus, online at theconservativecaucus.org. Jim, thank you for the time.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Good to be with you.
You got it. Good to have you. I'm Bob France, in for Chris DeGaulle. Thanks for watching this morning here on the Salem News Channel and listening on the Salem Radio Network. We'll be right back.